Confused as heck about macro counting. I'm not a big macro counter. I'm going to just preface this. Like, I'm not an expert by any means, but I think for basic understanding, if you're trying to lose weight, or for me, the macro counting is more to give me a visual understanding of what is appropriate for me to eat in terms of like protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Because here's the thing, a lot of us underestimate or overestimate the amount of food that we eat, okay? And so in this day and age, especially if you are starting to get older, you're trying to build some muscle, I think it's really important to think about this, just how much protein on average you are eating per day, because as we start to age, we lose muscle mass and our ability to metabolize protein actually decreases. So it is really important to be aware of that. Now, I've heard different people say, you should be eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I've heard, you should eat 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, right? Like, so there's all kinds of different recommendations out there. I think it can be very confusing. And if you agree with me, please drop that down in the comments. If you're really interested in how much protein you should be eating, it is recommended that you talk to a professional, right? Like a dietitian, for instance, to truly gain a better understanding of where you are in terms of your goals. So for me, though, I am big into lifting weights. So for me, and the fact that I'm very active, I don't sit a whole lot, I'm not very sedentary, I am going to go for the goal of building muscle, which is going to be at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. But for somebody who is mostly sedentary, doesn't lift a lot of weights, you go for walks every once in a while, you are probably going to want that 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Influencers on Instagram are not always the experts, okay, guys? We need to be aware of that. Like, where are you getting your information from? Just be aware, if you are not lifting a lot of weights, you're not very active, you don't need that much protein. So for a 130-pound woman, you're looking at approximately 47 grams of protein. Just to give you an idea, that's really not a whole lot. That's like maybe a chicken breast and a half for a whole day of protein. Speaking in terms of what I had said in the beginning, though, we are not as able to synthesize protein as well as we get older. So you might want to look a little higher in terms of how much protein you're eating. So that might mean, like at lunch you have a chicken breast, and then at dinner you have another chicken breast, and maybe at breakfast you're eating a little more protein, right? Because protein at breakfast is really, really important. But what I wanted to go over today is just using a basic food scale, because again, it's intimidating. Would you agree? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this thing, right? And initially I was confused thinking about macro counting, because I'm like, okay, if I'm putting meatballs in on this, how many meatballs are going to equal 30 grams of protein? Well, it's not 30 grams on here. That's your total weight, right? It's actually 144 grams total of meatball is equivalent to 30 grams of protein. So first of all, is depending on what kind of protein you are even eating, it's going to have different amounts of protein in it depending on how much of it you're eating. So for instance, if you're eating tofu, you're going to want 336 grams of firm tofu to equal close to 30 grams of protein. I'm just going off of 30 grams of protein because typically that is kind of the average recommended amount of protein we want to be eating at each meal to hit around that 100 grams or so of protein. But again, if you are lifting heavier weights, you're probably going to want to go a bit higher than that. So that's where you eat snacks that have protein in them and that kind of thing. But I just thought it would be interesting to go over this and like how you weigh your food to give you an idea. I think it's confusing to a lot of people. And I think this will just help clarify. And if you have any questions, then please drop them down below in the comments. And I also want to share another idea with you if you're not interested in macro counting. And here's the thing, I also want to tell you right now, I'm not an advocate for macro counting forever. I think that, and I'm sorry if you are that kind of person that you want to macro count for the rest of your life, that's not me. This is to give you just that visual understanding and awareness of how much food, how much protein. We are aiming for balanced meals, balanced snacks. So that means when you eat something say for instance, again, I'm about to make meatballs. I have leftovers, so I'm going to show you. When you eat a meal, you want to have something that has protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And so looking at a plate, we want to have about a quarter of the plate being your protein, a quarter of your plate being carbs, and then a half of the plate being vegetables. But then you're going to add in, let's say, like a tablespoon of olive oil, right, to get some of the healthy fats in there. So that's really, really important. And when you count your macros, it just gives you this idea of how much protein am I actually eating? I was thinking, initially when I made this meal, I would probably eat about maybe 3 meatballs. But when you actually weigh them in grams, that's not enough to get 30 grams of protein. You need to be eating more than that. So that's what all this is about, is understanding how much of one thing. So for instance, chicken, meatballs, Greek yogurt, you need to eat a certain amount. I think so, like for Greek yogurt, I want to say it's about 120 grams of Greek yogurt equals about 20-25 grams of protein. It just gives you more understanding of what you're eating. And if you're thinking about, maybe you're trying to gain muscle, maybe you're trying to lose fat, we do need to be in a slight calorie deficit. And then that takes a little more extensive where maybe using an app like MyFitnessPal and putting in what you're eating specifically, again, only for a few days, not forever. This just gives you an idea of what you're eating regularly, and to give you a better understanding of like what you need to be eating in the future to make those goals happen for you. Okay. So for me, again, I am not necessarily I'm not trying to lose weight right now. If anything, I'm trying to build muscle or even just maintain where I am, if that makes sense, is to be eating at least 30 grams of protein at each meal just to sustain my ability to put on muscle mass and grow and repair my muscle. Let's go ahead and try to use this scale here. So we got this scale off of Amazon called Vaunt. I'm sure you guys can find a similar one just like this. The batteries back to the scale broke one day. I don't know, it fell out of a cabinet or something, but it still works perfectly fine. But it has different units on it. So if you click it, you can use ounces, milliliters, pounds, and then grams. So I'm going to go with the grams for right now. And you want to make sure you always tear it down to 0 when you're first starting. So you put your whatever container you have on there and you're going to get it to the 0, right? We're clearing that out. And then we're going to go ahead and add the meatballs on. Okay. So 1 meatball is equivalent to 30 grams of meat in general. Okay. So we are aiming for, because I already looked this up, 144 grams of turkey meatball is going to be equivalent to 30 grams of protein. So that's what I'm trying to get to right now. Okay, so I'm at 3 meatballs is at 85 grams. So now we're at 4 meatballs is 111. So here, this is a really good example. When I'm eating these meatballs at night with my family, I'm thinking, okay, probably about 4 meatballs. Well, that right there tells me I'm not getting enough and that I actually do need to be eating close to 5 meatballs, which is right around 140 grams total. And like I said earlier, 144 grams is going to give me close to 30 grams of protein. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. So for instance, Greek yogurt, I think about that in the morning because I like making these protein bowls, right? But I had no idea. You're trying to get 3/4 cup of yogurt to get to the, whatever it is, 17 grams of protein, right? But maybe you want a little bit more protein than the 3/4 cup. Well, you could just measure it on this and then try to figure it out. And I think, like, again, I said 120 grams of Greek yogurt, I think is equivalent to 25 grams protein. So you would just measure out the 120 grams of Greek yogurt in your little container. And then there you go. Now you know you have the 25 grams of protein from your yogurt, and then maybe you have another 14 or whatever in your protein powder that you're adding in. So it just gives you a better understanding of where you are in terms of your protein. You can also do this with carbohydrates. You try to figure out, like, for instance, most of us are needing probably about 225 to 325 grams of carbohydrates. So there's a range there. And that's, again, where if you are in a calorie deficit, you want to consider, this is where working with a professional is very helpful, but how many grams of carbohydrates I should be eating each day to stay in that range to lose a little bit of weight or, to lose fat. Another thing that I have learned that I think is so helpful, if you are trying to eat enough protein and maybe you're out and you're at a restaurant and you don't have access to one of these babies here, You can also use your hand to visualize how much of different things that you want to eat. Like for instance, protein, they say the size of your palm. So if I'm fitting all of these meatballs on my palm, we're looking at probably about 4 to 4.5 or 5. So that just gives you kind of a quick visualization. Chicken, right? Like chicken breast, they say 130 grams of cooked chicken equals 30 grams of protein. So if you use your palm to kind of visualize, and that is about a half a size of a chicken breast, right? And for everybody, we all have different size palms. So that would be a better guidance for you to figure out how much protein you need to eat. And then if you cup your palm, that's about how much carbohydrate you're going to want to add to your plate each time, each meal. So if I'm having rice or potatoes, so here I have potatoes, I usually just fill my plate about a quarter full of carbohydrates. But again, if you want to be more specific and visualize cupping your palm, and then that's about how many carbohydrates you want to eat, just to give you an idea. And then fats. This is one that I think is very interesting because I think a lot of us underestimate how much fat we are eating. So here's the thing, right? Olive oil, if we're cooking with it, if you're adding salad dressing to your salad, just be aware that fat has more calories than say protein and carbohydrates. So you do want to think about that. And so they say if you look at your thumb, that's about how many fats you want to add to your meal. So if you're having salad dressing or butter, think about using about the size of your thumb, and that's going to help you kind of just visualize how much fat you want to add to your meals. That's just a quick like visual, but in terms of how much fat, typically you want to eat about 40 grams of fat per day. So just to give you an idea, 1 tablespoon of oil, say olive oil, is about 14 grams of fat. So that's where we have to be aware of that. I didn't write down avocado. I should have written that down because I think, and nuts. Nuts, avocado, and eggs are 3 foods we have to consider people can overeat very easily. So just be aware of that. Like if this is more if you're trying to lose some weight. We want to be aware that when you're eating foods you think might be high in protein, such as eggs, those are actually more a source of fat. So it would be good to look into that. Are you eating like 6 eggs a day? Because that is actually close to 30 grams of fat. So that's going to be a lot more calories. So that's where some people will add in egg white, like a half a cup of egg whites, because you're getting the protein, but you're not getting as much fat. So there's just different tricks you can do. And then in terms of eating nuts, like I know I used to eat a ton of nuts and didn't realize there's a lot of fat in those nuts, guys. So what can we add to those nuts to keep the calorie count down? Maybe you have a little handful of nuts and then you have some Greek yogurt with it, where, if you want to just count out again the Greek yogurt to see how much protein you're getting along with the nuts. That's just a great way to just stay on track. So I hope this helps you. Please let me know if you have other questions about this. I really just follow the plate method. So what's the plate method? We just put, I need to be eating at least 5 meatballs to get to my goal of 30 grams protein. I have my potatoes and I'm going to do a quarter of the plate in my potato. And then I am going to use this chopped salad that I have. And I do like to fill about half of my plate with greens, non-starchy greens, super high in volume. We always want to think about what are foods that we can add high in volume that fill us up but are not high in calories. So things like cucumbers, salad, green beans, broccoli, whatever. I'll just show you. I don't tend to use a lot of the salad dressings that come with these kits. I just like sometimes getting, because they already have all the colors, right? Like we have the red cabbage and carrots and different things, scallions. You don't necessarily need to count your vegetables. I don't, some people probably do, but I don't do that. It's more about like, let's fill that plate up with those vegetables because they're low in calories. You can eat more volume. They're wonderful because they're high in fiber and you're getting all those phytonutrients, polyphenols, vitamins, minerals from those plants. So I hope that makes sense. Yes, and so Courtney mentioned it's really great. Instead of using a lot of oil-based sauces, you can add things like salsa, lemon juice. You can try even like a little bit of hummus on the side versus the heavy oil-based salad dressings. That's always a great idea. And adding seeds instead of nuts, that's also a good idea too. Yes, I appreciate that. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm learning right along with you. I just find it so fascinating to think about where we need to be, especially as we start to get older, and we want to make sure we're getting those nutrients to support our body the best way that we can, right? And it's time, if you're struggling, like you're not feeling well, like maybe you don't have energy throughout the day, maybe you're falling flat at 2 p.m. A lot of that typically is nutrients that you're low in. So we need to look at adding more balanced meals, more balanced snacks, maybe adding in some minerals into your water, right? Like some electrolytes into your water. And just small changes like that can make such a big difference in those energy levels and helping you feel better throughout the day. So I hope this helps. I hope you guys are having a great day. We'll talk soon, okay?